Hi everyone, this is Ants. Today I'm going to show you a project I worked on that is basically an updated version of the Vertex Animation demo that was available for 3.3, Godot 3.3. And it took a little bit of effort to get everything working on 4, but I made some modifications. I updated the model. Now it's using the K-Kits Mage. And I also made available 3 floats that you could pass to the shader to do your own thing. And I'm going to be talking about that. And it also works on the web, and I'm going to show you working on the web. So it's in compatibility mode, but it works under Forward Plus. It's just I kept it a compatibility mode so that I could do the web demo for you. And the performance is really good. It's using multi-mesh instance 3D. So it's basically just one mesh and then it's instance 200 times. But I'm using one of the floats within the color data type, the custom data, which is a color, which has 4 floats. I'm only using one of the 4 floats to randomize the start of the animation frame, okay? And I'm going to show you the original version of the project that uses basically a person clapping, and it only has 4 frames and it only has like 500 vertices. It's a very low poly thing, and this is a little bit more kind of detailed animation. Let's look at the FPS here. I usually get 200, but because I'm running a lot of different things, it's down to 168 now. So just keep that number in mind. So this is my updated version, and within the same project. And I cleaned up the other project because it had some other examples that I just completely removed. So it's a cleaned up version. And I'm going to show you the original one that's been updated for Godot 4.3. And we're going to play that. And as you can see, this is a very basic Kenny asset, and basically anything that's moving is basically his hands and arms and all that kind of stuff, and he's clapping, and it's only 7 frames. And so they're randomized frames, but you can't really tell because the number of frames are so low. But the interesting part of the original demo that you may need as a use case is he allows the other 3 floats within color, so the RGB. He allows that to change randomly the color of the shoes, the color of the pants, and the color of the shirts using a tint mask. And I'm going to show you how he does it, and then in terms of the shader. But for my use case of my mage, I didn't want to change the color of the mage and all that, kind of use a tint mask, because I actually like all the mages and all that. But so the difference is, if you still need this use case, and this use case you could tell, like he wanted to set up an audience that is completely, random kind of colors and all that kind of stuff. So it looks like different people, and they're all animating at a slightly different kind of animation frame, start animation frame, and that's a great use case. So I included the original and the new Mage one, so that the Mage one gives you option to pass floats to the shader to do other interesting things, like maybe changing the entire alpha of the entire model so you can make them disappear slowly, or you can make them change a tint, all of it to red. Like you could do different things, and it's just up to your imagination and your skills in shader to actually do stuff like that. So again, I showed you the demo of the original working on 4.3, right? And I'm going to go back to the Mage and run it on the web, right? And run in browser. And there you go. So it runs perfectly in the browser, no errors, other than it's just beautiful, and the performance is good. And also the memory, I did some profiling. It's rock solid. And the reason why it's not using much memory is because it's just one instance basically, right? And it's just it's using GLES, instancing, all that kind of stuff. And again, it works on Forward Plus and mobile. Everything works. It's just compatibility mode shows it on the web. As you can see, this is a web page, right? So I proved that, right? So that's basically the demo, right? So we're gonna go on the second part, and before I go on the second part, I wanted to basically communicate that it was actually kind of hard to find. Like basically, I asked the Godot community what's the best way to have an instance animated multi-mesh thing working like KKit's Mage, right? Like, oh, because KKit's Mage is a multi-node mesh with bones and that sort of thing, and it's in a hierarchy, and there's multiple meshes there and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people said, oh, it's not possible, blah, blah, blah. And you got to watch on the Godot, and I was on the official Godot Discord, but I went to an advanced help, and I basically said my use case. I want to basically make, you know, hundreds of copies of this model that is a multi-mesh. And, you know, we're using mesh instance 3D. It's just one mesh you could instance. Similar to other frameworks like libgdx, it also instances just one mesh. So how do I do multi-mesh, right? So there was one response saying use Vertex Animation, and they linked a project. And the project they linked, right, is this one here, which is the original one. So I based the project, my project, on this, and the majority of the documentation is the same, right? And thank God I found this because it's great. The only thing is it's version 3.3 and it doesn't work on 4.3 out of the box. But it's the stuff that I have to fix wasn't too bad. It didn't take much to fix. And they had some other kind of demos that I wasn't interested in, like the castle, the ice shards. I wasn't interested in that. So yeah, so these demos that I'm showing you, you need to install something in Blender. So the gravy, or like the secret sauce of this entire solution, is this not Unreal Tools, the Vertex Animation for Blender. And you need to download this, and we're going to get into how to install and all that kind of stuff. So the tutorial is going to start soon. And now I created another repo, and I hopefully made it public. Is it public? So I made this, and I updated all the kind of like animations and graphics, and I updated some of the documentation. I put more screenshots of for the documentation, so you know what to expect, right? And how to kind of set everything up, and updated the asset licenses and all that, right? KKit's the best. And I renamed it to Godot 4.3 Vertex Animation Instancing Demo. So this will be available. I'll put it in the link. So this is going to be kind of like the new place to go for an example of Vertex Animation using instancing, i.e. it's going to use the multi-mesh instance 3D node. Okay, so sorry for that long kind of how did I get here, but I think it's important because if you notice from what I said, oh, that's exactly what I want, then this is the place to be, right? Okay, so you need to install something on Blender. So let's go to Blender and actually show you where to install, right? So it's actually quite easy. You go to Preferences, you download the files. There's only 2 files. It's just 2 Python files. And you install it. And then once you install it, and by the way, everything I'm going through very quickly is documented in the repo step by step. And then once you install it, you get access to this toolbar here called Not Unreal Tools, right? And this is what you need to do to export kind of the single mesh that has encoded the animations. You have to select which animation you want, right? And I'm doing the chop, right? And you have to set, this is an important step, the start and end frame. You have to set, or because if you, by default, sometimes Blender actually sets it to 240 or something like that, and it will actually encode 240 frames that you don't need, and that's not correct. So you set it to the correct start and end frame, right? And then you select which meshes, and as you can see, KKit's mesh, there's multiple meshes that are included in this, right? And that's why you can't use multi-mesh instance 3D on a multi-mesh kind of model, because you only could do one of these at a time. But anyways, so you select which ones, and this is important too, because sometimes the model has stuff that you don't want. Like I hid the spellbook open, right? So this is spellbook open, and this is spellbook closed. I want the closed, right? So I I don't select that. And also, if you look at the staff, there's also a wand that's built in. So KKit's actually doing everything for you and making it easier, but sometimes harder, because when you're using this tool now, you have to select which ones you actually want. So you select all the mesh that you want to export as a single mesh with the encoded animations. And all you need to do is click this button. Once you've done all that, you click this button. Take some time, and here is the gold, this export mesh here. And that's all you need to export. Now you could see some white there. That's a static mesh. And there's no color or anything like that because you don't need that. And this is what you need to export. And the way you do that is you select this and you go to File, Export as GLB, GLTF. There's a very detailed thing of what you need to include. The most important one is selected objects. So to only export the selected object, and you have to, don't put the animations. I'm trying to remember in terms of the geometry, the material, you don't need the materials either. You don't need all that. And then you export that into where you need to go, right? I'm gonna call it Mage GLB, and it's just gonna be a static mesh, right? And it exports. But there's two other files that are generated too. And again, this is in the documentation. Go to Blender file. There's two files, normals.png and offsets.exr, I think. These two files are very important and you're gonna need, and they're dumped where your blend path is. And let's go to downloads. Sorry, go to Blender 3.1 and it's in, so depending on where your blend file source is, it's in the root for mine. These are the two files that are kind of generated. And if we look into one, it's 4,304 times 25. It's basically the number of vertices times the number of frames minus 1. I'm going to say that again. This is basically using an image, encoding all the vertices, where they are, what the positions are, and all that kind of stuff in this file. That's what it's actually storing. Now, a couple of things is, if your model is very big and has a lot of vertices, this file is going to get pretty big. So my recommendation, and again, this is just my opinion, is you should use somewhat low poly kind of models, or else this file, it gets bigger and your performance might not be as good. So just keep that in mind, right? And the exe file is the same. It's an offset, and you're going to need all these three files to be imported into Godot. Okay, so again, install plugin, preferences, add-ons, install, right? Select the file to install, follow the documentation, right? Make sure you put the start and end tracks, select the meshes. Let's go back to view layer, select the message you want to export. Once you've all that, and you click on process mesh meshes, and let's delete this. And let's redo it. And it will generate the mesh, and then you export that mesh and make sure you follow the instructions. That's basically it. There's three files, mesh and two images, basically in two different formats. Okay. All right. So let's go back to Godot. Okay. So the most important instance in this project is the multi-mesh instance 3D. Okay. And multi-mesh instance 3Ds needs a multi-mesh, and you create a new one, and or just use the existing project and drag and drop your new one. But before we actually get into that, the most important things that we need to do is, first of all the images that you have, go to import and make sure it's lossless. Do not go to compress. It defaults to compressed and all that, and you don't want compressed images. You don't want MIP maps because there's no need for MIP maps. These are basically data files. They're not images, they're data files basically. You don't need to generate MIP maps. And there's some other things you need to make sure you don't need. Offsets, EXR, is you also have to make sure it's lossless. And you need to generate now a resource file that is basically the export mesh. So you double click what was exported from Blender. And again, I might be losing a lot of people now, and don't worry about it. It's documented pretty well. I am not an expert in Blender, nor Godot, but if I could figure out, you definitely could figure out, just follow the instructions. But basically, go down to the mesh that was exported, and you enable save to file, and save it as export mesh.res. And save it, make sure you know where it is, right? I put it all in assets/mage, and that's basically it. You got the 3 files, and then the original texture. So this file here is basically the color of the mage, right? That's going to be the original one that came with the model, right? So that's basically it. So let's go back to the scene and go back to multi-mesh, and you drag and drop this file into the mesh. And the next things you need to do is you need to update the shader kind of images, right? So basically the magic is in the shader, right? And so you go to the shader. This is the shader here. It's actually not that long. Like, in all honesty, the majority of the code is actually doing the like basically parsing the images and actually changing the vertices, I guess, right? So anyways, the most important thing you need to do is make sure you put the start and end frame. How many frames does this have? Because it doesn't know. It doesn't know how many frames are included. So you have to do that yourself. The time scale basically is the speed. So look how fast he's going. Oh, he's too fast there, or she's too fast. So anyways, let's go back to 1.5. Right. So that's all configurable. Specular, metallical, and roughness. This is PBR shader, physics based rendering. You should know this stuff, but basically how shiny, how reflective, and how rough it is, and all that kind of stuff. And then the most important things is you have to kind of drag and drop the offset into this field and the normals into this field, right? And as you can see, the normals are 4,000. It's basically the number of vertices times the number of frames minus 1. And basically that's it. And then you put the texture albedo so that it knows what color the mage is and all that kind of stuff. And that's basically it. That's basically it. Now, if you do all these things and you see an animated kind of model, that means you did everything right. But sometimes you're going to see something like this. I'll show you. Go over here, go to issues, right? So if you see something like this, it means you've not set the compression to lossless, because you're compressing things and things are out of whack. So if you see something like this, it means you haven't set, I'll show you, you go to the normals, and especially I think it's the offset one that has to be lossless. And that's how you fix that problem. Okay, so that's basically it. And I'm going to show you the original one of the code, right? So we have to look at the code, scene. Okay, so on ready. So basically there's no process in this demo. What I'm trying to say is during the process, nothing is actually changing, which is fantastic. It means that, you know, nothing's slowing down. It's all basically shader. So basically on setup, you go through all the children and you change where it is, all the different instances. And I'm basically, this is all I'm doing. The animation offset is just a random float, and I pass it to the random color. And as you can see, I'm hard coding 111. These 3 float values are available to the shader for you to do anything you want. Okay, because on the other demo of the clapper, he uses these 3 floats to change the shoe color, the pant color, and the shirt color. But I'm not using it at all. So this is using the mage one basically is powerful for extending whatever you want to use it for. And then you basically pass the index of that instance this color, and it's passed on to the shader, and I'm only using the animation offset so that things look random. But if you go to the clapper, right, as you can see, he's randomizing the shoe color, pants color, and shirt color. And he also is using an offset, but you can't tell the offset on the clapper because it's only 7 frames of of animation, right? And so he's passing all those floats to the shader, and he's using that to change the color. And he created 2 new uniforms called the texture tint mask. So basically he has RGB, blue, red, and green, and it maps to the pants, the shoes, and the shirt. And basically when it's blue, he's swapping it out with one of these floats and that sort of thing. The texture palette basically is kind of setting the color of all the different shirts, basically all the random colors. That's the palette of those random colors. That's what it's used for. So, okay. So I think that's, we should leave it at that. Again, the original one is, I haven't changed it other than making it work for Godot. And then I've included a new one where I'm actually have available to you kind of like 3 floats that you could actually modify the shader to do something interesting. So that's basically it. And it's web enabled. It works on all the different renderers. And that's basically it. And I'm going to show you where to find it in the new repo, and it's going to be 4.3. I'll put it on Reddit and also the Discord servers to socialize. And if you have any fixes on this, just let me know and I'll update it. And that's basically it. So I always like to end the video in the actual demo. So let's start this. Oops. There we go. All right. So I hope you enjoyed the video. And again, the documentation is pretty good. If I could figure it out, I'm pretty sure you could figure it out. And I had a really good time actually doing this. And I want to thank the person who actually pointed me into this direction. Forgot his name, but I did say thank you on the Discord server. And I'm glad I found it because I could do some really, really cool stuff. Anyways, take care and have a great day. Bye.